and we are going to be speaking about retrieving the art of blessing, or as John O'Donoghue calls it in this lovely book, Benedictus, he calls it the lost art of blessing. So, as I've said, I'm going to be speaking a little bit about the what, how, why, where, when and who of blessings. And I guess there are many ways that we can and do think about blessings. So we often think and speak about how we might feel blessed. It's lovely to see all your hellos coming in. We speak and think about how we receive blessings. We might think about feeling blessed, receiving blessings from one another, from the wider world. But for the purposes of this discussion, for the context of this discussion, I'm really going to be focusing on what it is to give a blessing. Oh, hello, Carol, just from down the road in Storrington. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about just what it means to give a blessing. So if any of you haven't read this wonderful book, Benedictus, it's a real treasure trove by John O'Donoghue, the Irish priest, philosopher, poet. It's a treasure trove for all celebrants and anybody really who's interested in blessings. And I think a lot of these blessings, the vast majority of them, don't mention religion or God. So I think it's quite accessible and useful even for people of a more secular or humanist outlook, as well as those of us who might relate to a more spiritual outlook. So John O'Donoghue he talks about blessing in a number of ways. He really, as well as offering this treasury of blessing, he really philosophises and reflects on what he calls the lost art of blessing. And I prefer to think of it not as lost, because I think it's always been around and will always be around, but perhaps it has been more prevalent probably in all cultures than it is now in our increasingly kind of secular world. So there's certainly plenty of good retrieving of the art of blessing that we can do. So a couple of quotes that I wanted to share with you on how John O'Donoghue talks about blessing. He speaks about a blessing as a protective circle of light. He says, what is a blessing? A blessing is a circle of light drawn around a person to protect, heal and strengthen. Life is a constant flow of emergence, and the beauty of a blessing is its belief that it can affect what unfolds. So I guess John O'Donoghue's way of thinking and speaking about blessings certainly does refer to his faith, albeit that he puts it within a wider philosophical context, and he also puts it within a very particular cultural context, which is the Irish context, and the sort of Celtic spiritual tradition. And he reflects in his book about how blessing was really an everyday thing. So I'm just sorry, I've got a bit too many bookmarks in there, but yeah, he talks about how in the Irish tradition there was a sort of courtesy and a convention of blessing. So, for example, he says in Connemara, when one puts on a new garment, there's a blessing that says, "May you live and may you wear it, and may you wear 7 more, even better than it." So he talks about the oral tradition of blessings there, and how that in the Celtic tradition there was a blessing really for every possible happening, and that's reflected in his book. But I think another perhaps more prosaic way that we can think about blessing is simply as a particular kind of focusing of positive intent, a real kind of drawing in and calling up a positive intent. And so if we don't necessarily have a religious belief, we can think about this calling of positive intent from, well, firstly from within ourselves, of course. If we're doing it with other people, we can think about calling in this positive intent from within, from amongst the whole of the gathering as well. And we could also perhaps think about calling this intent in from all around us. So for some of us, it might have particular, we might have a particular way of relating to the natural world, so that we can really feel that we can invite in the blessings from all around us, from the natural world as well. And when we bless whatever situation we're blessing for, we really tune in a very special way and apply a very particular kind of focus to the who and the what and the why we're blessing. So we really hold that situation or those people in our hearts, and we think about positive intent, we think about loving kindness, and benevolence and compassion, and we think about the particular needs of that situation or the wishes that we want to give to that situation, and we really apply a special kind of focus to inviting those into a moment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about blessing in the context of ceremony, but I want to first just take a moment's pause again to think about who can give a blessing, because in religious cultures it's often been thought or presumed that a blessing is the preserve of a particular few, and that only certain ordained people may have the power or the right to give a blessing. And it's lovely to read in John O'Donoghue's book. He reflects on a particular moment when he, as a young priest, arrived at a convent and was welcomed by the mother of the house, who was an elderly lady, who'd spent her whole life in religious contemplation. And when he arrived there as a young priest, she asked him for his blessing. And he was really rather taken aback to be asked for a blessing by this lady that had spent her whole life in that contemplative life. And so he turned it around and asked her for her blessings, and which she in turn was quite taken aback. But part of the reason why I chose the particular image for when you do an event on Facebook, they always ask you to upload an image. So I was thinking, well, what image can I use to somehow say something about what I want to discuss this evening? And I later shared in a more recent post the blessing hand of Kuan Yin, but that didn't quite get to where I wanted. And why I chose that lovely image of three young people just with their hands in the centre is because it really brings across this idea that we can all give blessings to each other. In that Celtic tradition and in many other traditions around the world, many other cultures around the world, it's been natural that elders may bless their youngers, that family members can bless each other in particular ways. I'm thinking about my husband's culture that I've married into, the Batak culture, where one of the traditions, for example, is when it's believed that someone's nearing the end of their life, there'll be a particular form of blessing where everyone will come and will feed that person by hand to their mouth, all the family members. Or in the Batak wedding ceremonies, there are lots and lots of dances and other ceremonies. There are lots of dances that happen where some parts of the family will line up and other parts of the family will process past them, and everybody will be giving blessings like this, and as you're filing past in the dance you'll be receiving blessings. So in all kinds of cultures it's been common that we give blessings to each other, and I don't know exactly what those young people were doing in that photograph, but it certainly looks like they're focusing together on some positive activity that they're carrying out together, and the way that they've got all their hands together sort of suggests to me that they're doing that exactly what I've been talking about. They're focusing the positive intent, and they might have done that with some words, but they're certainly doing it with a gesture. And as celebrants, I don't know how many people here tuning into this broadcast now, or perhaps watching it later in various forms, are celebrants. But as celebrants, we might think of the whole of what we do as conducting ceremony as a kind of blessing. But one of the ways that celebrants are really different from a priesthood is that we're not ordained, we're not separate from or different to the communities and the gatherings that we work with. We're really facilitating that blessing on behalf of everybody that's there. So again, that picture really reflects that sense of equality. So when we conduct ceremony, often our ceremony, when people contact me for a ceremony, they might say, I'd like you to do a wedding blessing for me. And what they mean by that is the whole ceremony. But I also like to think of that there are particular moments of blessing within a ceremony. And that can be a moment of blessing from everybody. So, for example, in a wedding ceremony, I and many other celebrants have a moment where we call on everybody present to give their blessings. Will you all support this couple in the promises they've made before you? Please join me in a big "we will." Or at a naming or welcoming blessing for a child, the child might be carried around the gathering in order that everyone present can each give their blessing in a particular way. I'm sorry, I can see that some of you are leaving messages, but I haven't quite worked out how to... Oh, Charles is saying, when Pope Francis was announced as the new Pope, he stepped out on the balcony and the first thing he did was to ask the crowd to bless him. Seeing, yes, he wanted to bless them, but he needed them to bless him more, which is yeah, that's lovely to read. So yes, I was talking about the particular moments in a ceremony that are moments of blessing. So in a funeral service, the committal, that moment where we give the collective farewell, is a moment of blessing. And after my first couple of years as a celebrant, I went along to a Catholic funeral, and it was a really rather lovely Catholic funeral where the priest was really excellent and really welcomed in, was very aware that many of us in his congregation that day were not from the Catholic tradition, and so he really did sort of take the time to explain what was going on and what it meant to him and to the people within that Catholic tradition, and to enable and invite others of us there to be able to kind of participate in that in our own ways. And one of the things that I noticed at that ceremony was how lovely it is when people speak together, speak familiar words together. And so from that time onwards, I began to complete my committal blessings with some words that I invite everybody to join in with me. I always, obviously only if that's okay with the families that I'm doing the services for, but I always sort of discuss this with them and offer it as an option. And the words that I most commonly use are the words of the Celtic blessing, which many of us within the Druid tradition, all of us will be familiar with. Many within different Christian traditions will also be familiar with, but I think its history definitely goes deeper than that, and it's the deep peace of the running wave to you, deep peace of the flowing air to you, deep peace of the quiet earth to you, deep peace of the shining stars to you. And in the context of a funeral, we'll complete that with the name of that person. May you rest in peace. And most families, that I offer to use this blessing for, even if they are not religious, most of them will respond very positively to it, and I think it just somehow carries a familiar ring that perhaps echoes down, through the ages, through the generations to when this blessing was a familiar part, and blessings more widely were a familiar part of everyday life. So yeah, another reason why I chose that image for this discussion is that those young people are just sitting down on the pavement, and it's obviously not a ceremony of any kind. Of course, we can give blessings at ceremonies for births and deaths and marriages and other occasions, but we also might want to give blessings in ceremonial or non-ceremonial form for other occasions like divorces, blessings for a new home, blessings for a new venture, blessings for a new job, blessings for retirement, which is what the subject of next month's School of Celebrancy broadcast is going to be. And I'm going to be joined then by Britta Holden, who recently carried out a lovely retirement blessing that she's going to be sharing with us about. We might want to give blessings for particular places. We might want to give blessings for particular times, which leads me on to now hopefully inviting in Adam to share his blessing for spring. Yeah, Adam, before you give your blessing spring, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how and why you wrote it and what inspired you to write that blessing.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. Lovely to hear all your work so far about blessings. So with the blessing for spring, it's the second one that I've written and sort of put out into the world. Really, so I wrote one back in winter, and I wrote it really because I think during this, obviously we've been during this difficult time, the winter was even more harsh than it often is for people. I just thought I kind of wanted to put something out there, and I've always written poems and I guess sort of blessings in a way. and it just felt like the right time to do it and to put it out. And also, there's something for me about putting some beautiful words out into the world of social media, you know, which is a brilliant world because it allows us to do things like this, which is amazing, and it's been invaluable during this time. But it can also have a lot of quite fractious language, I feel, and fractious sort of energy. So there's something about putting a blessing out into that. I just felt really moved to do. So yeah, the one in Winter went down well, and then I've done another one just last week there, and it seems to have gone down quite well. And it's yeah, it's a lovely thing to be doing, really. So yeah.
Oh, thank you for that, Adam. So I'm going to invite you to actually give your blessing. You've focused on all this lovely positive intent, and I would like to invite you to just, you know, to give yourself a moment's pause before you read your blessing, and to be aware that you're sending it out to everyone who's with us now in this broadcast, but also to others who may be watching it later. And wherever you are and whenever you are watching this, whoever is with us, I would like to invite you to just take a moment to get yourself comfortable, and perhaps you might even like to close your eyes. I'm going to close my eyes as I listen to Adam. I'm going to close my eyes and open my ears and open my heart, and really be ready to fully receive your beautiful blessing for spring, Adam.
Wonderful. Thanks, River. So, a blessing for spring. Yes, it is a little warmer, and the days are stretching longer than they dared to just a week or two ago. And you are coming back to life. You are shaking off those last tired flakes of winter before emerging with renewed vigour from the shelter you have now outgrown. May the faces you meet be as transformed and expectant as your own. May the dark nights you leave behind inform this new beauty which is slowly coming into bud. May you have the courage to pull back at least one protective layer and brave the warming western winds. Might your heart begin to open, your mind begin to stretch, your feet begin to venture. Might your breath be freer and your burdens be light. And so may these longer, brighter days be filled with a renewed hope and a steady faith in the innumerable shoots of possibility which you are root and soil to.
Oh, thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Absolutely beautiful words. So I just want to finish this broadcast just by saying that I really hope, well, there's a couple of things that I want to say in the way of just telling people where you might want to find out a little bit more about what we've been talking about. First of all, just another plug for this beautiful book, Benedictus by John O'Donoghue. Just to say that on the School of Celebrancy courses, which Adam's on the Celebrating Life course at the moment, we talk about blessings in those courses, and there's some more examples that are shared, you know, for various purposes. And I'm going to be exploring more in a new course, a couple of new courses that I'm working on at the moment that are going to be launched later this year. One's going to be celebrating community, so we're really going to be exploring there about all of these blessings for all kinds of other occasions other than the hatchings, matchings and dispatchings. And another one called Celebrating Earth, which is really going to be aimed at celebrants in the wider celebrant community who may want to explore tapping into the inspiration of nature more in their work as celebrants. But I just want to finish by saying that I really hope that we as celebrants and also just we as families, as communities, as people really continue to reclaim this wonderful art of blessing. So yeah, I'm just going to complete by saying bright blessings to one and all.
Bless you. Thank
Bless you too. Bye bye.
Thank you.